Hey guys, I'm gonna try and sneak a vlog in because look, Wyatt's asleep here. And then Adelia's asleep over here. Now I know both kids are asleep and I should probably be taking a nap in there. Yeah, but when else am I gonna vlog? So while they're snoozing, I'm gonna try and update you guys, okay? Hey guys, this is gonna be part 2 of my birth video. I left off on part 1, just kind of general. My blood pressure had gone really high and I didn't know why. It was very sudden. Medication wasn't helping and they had made the decision to go ahead and do the C-section. So when shift change happened and the new team came in, the OB that came in was actually formerly my gynecologist and had been my gynecologist for most of my 20s. I was actually really bummed when he switched from gynecology over to obstetrics because it meant I had to find a whole new gynecologist after years of having someone I really liked. So when he came in and he was the OB that was the main OB and in charge that night, that really made me feel a lot better because I knew him and I trusted him and I felt comfortable with him. He's very no-nonsense, which is why I like my regular OB to begin with, because they don't mess around, they do what they need to do, they're open, they're honest, and they're kind. And I knew this guy was going to be all those things. So he came in and he said, look, your blood pressure is too high. The medication is doing nothing. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. We are concerned about stroke, and we obviously don't want you to have a stroke. Our only real option at this point is to deliver baby, because that's the only thing that's going to make your blood pressure stop rising and come back down to a safe place. So load up, let's go. And before I knew it, the nurse was handing Ethan scrubs and he was climbing into those and they were hooking and unhooking all kinds of things and getting my bed ready, wheeled me down the hallway, and the operating room was just down the hallway from the room that I was in. And they have these kind of like sliding glass doors, kind of like when you walk into a store and you walk in front of it and it opens up. And they just wheeled me right in there in the bed that I was in. And I had been okay and excited, you know, but I think as soon as those doors opened up and as soon as I actually saw the operating room, everything kind of hit me at once. The reality of baby's coming. She's going to be here in probably an hour at that point, you know, knowing that that's roughly how long it takes for a C-section. So baby's going to be here in an hour. Just the fact that my health was in fact that bad, that they were rushing, because up until then they'd been rather wishy-washy as to whether or not they were going to do the C-section or if they were going to wait overnight, and they were on it to wait till the next team came in and whatever. So all of a sudden it was, nope, you're sick, we need to do this now. So that was scary, and just the fact that I was having another C-section. Now, this is my 3rd C-section. I've had 2 before. They shouldn't be a big deal, and yet they are. It is still major abdominal surgery. It's still a big deal. It's routine, but, you know, it's still surgery. And knowing that I was about to have another spinal, which I'd had problems with in the past, and about to be opened up and a little tiny human being taken out of me, it was scary. And it all hit me at once. And I've had problems with anxiety the last few years. And I haven't sought help from a doctor. It's something that I've chose to deal with on my own at home. And I've actually managed to gain pretty good control over it. The panic attacks have gotten better. That's required a few life changes that have helped too. But I have very few panic attacks now. And even when I do have one, I'm pretty good at controlling it and kind of talking myself back down. So when I got into the operating room and I looked around and there were all these people running around me and reality hit, and I probably had the worst panic attack I think I've ever had in my entire life. I've never felt one this bad. And like I said, nobody knows about my anxiety from a medical standpoint, so I didn't want to say anything to them. I didn't want to freak them out. There's nothing on record that they know about it. And I wasn't really sure what they would do to try and fix the situation anyway. So I basically just kind of shut down. I got very quiet. There was a nurse that was standing in front of me to kind of catch me if I were to fall, while the anesthesiologist was working behind me to put the spinal in. And she had a name badge on, and she had little pins across the top of her name badge. And there was one, and I don't remember for sure what it was. I remember it had wings. I don't remember if it was an angel or a butterfly or something with wings. That's all I can remember now. But I focused on that one pin, and I didn't see anything else. I didn't hear anything else. I didn't focus on anything else because it was so... They were rushing to get things done. There were people over here that were counting, you know, all of the tools, and they were writing stuff up on the whiteboard, and there were people over here from the anesthesiologist team that was working with my IV and getting a blood pressure cuff on me, plus there was the anesthesiologist behind me, and he's, you know, prepping me and getting me ready for the spinal. The OB team is in and out and talking to me. There's nurses everywhere. It's really overwhelming to begin with, and I focused straight on that pin, worked on my deep breathing, and just did my best to kind of swallow it. And it worked. Maybe it wasn't my smartest idea. Maybe I should have told somebody that I was having a panic attack, but it worked for me. I managed to keep control of myself and control of the anxiety, and I got through it. This by far was the best spinal I've had. With Brian, I had an epidural, and with Wyatt, I had a spinal. And I don't know why they did different ones for different C-sections. I never really got an answer on that. And both times they hurt. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was worse than the contractions, because when I went in with Brian, I was in labor. I was in, having contractions. I'd been in labor. My water had broke all day long. You know, my water had broke the day before. I'd been having contractions all day long. I was in labor. I was in pain. And that epidural hurt more than the contractions and everything did. And I was pretty far along in my labor at that point. And the epidural it felt like someone took their hand at the bottom of my spine and just shoved everything up into the back of my skull. And with the spinal with Wyatt, it was more of like a sharp electric, almost like somebody was shooting electricity into my spine. Every time they would miss and hit the wrong spot, it was like a lightning bolt hit my spine. So of course, after those two experiences, I'm terrified of this, this spinal that is being put in, which is just another thing making my panic attack worse, because I knew it was going to be painful, and I was so, oh God, not again. But this anesthesiologist was awesome. He did a really good job. There was one tiny little pinprick of pain. Other than that, nothing. I felt nothing. He did, seriously, an amazing job, and very, very, very little pain. And if every C-section had been like that, I wouldn't have been scared at all. The only thing I don't like is, with the epidural, I felt very warm and floaty, and everything is wonderful. With the spinals, I just kind of feel like dead weight. I very quickly laid down after they got it in. I learned that the hard way with Wyatt, when I didn't sit down right away, and they freaked out, and then I kind of started to tip. So I laid down right away this time. And then that dead weight feeling starts at your toes and works its way up, and I really hate that feeling, because I hate not being able to move my feet and move my toes, and then I start thinking, oh my God, I want to move my toes, and I can't, and yeah. So I just had to, again, breathe through that and get past it. Very quickly, everything went up. The blue screen that they put up between you and the surgery, and they put it up, it wasn't even like put up well. It's like they just whipped it up and clipped it, and I just thought that seemed really weird. I heard a lot of chaos going on over here to my right side, and then I kept smelling the, what's it called? The liquid that they use to flush out your IV. I'm suddenly having a brain fart. But the saline. They kept flushing my IV, and I kept smelling the saline, and when I smelled the saline, I knew that that was what they were doing, and they were talking about it, and something about saline would flush, but medication would not go in, and I said, you're getting something in, I can smell it, I know you're flushing that IV, and the anesthesiologist said, yes, the saline flushes, the medication doesn't, we're going to have to find a different spot for this IV. So they took out the one that I had, and then I had one lady over here on my right that was working to put a new one in where they had taken the one out. I had another lady here on my left who was working on my left arm, which actually when I got home I counted all the little holes that I had, and I had 16 holes from, like, you know, here to my elbow. 16 holes, and I had 4 on this side, and they weren't finding it. The main anesthesiologist came up to me. He said, remember what we talked about earlier tonight, that worst case scenario, we're gonna have to go in through your neck. And there goes the panic attack again. I'm thinking, no, I don't want it in my neck, but of course I'm not gonna argue that I know they're gonna do whatever they need to do. So he said, first we're gonna try and do the one in the bone. Remember I told you we would drill into your bone and try to put an IV in that way. If that doesn't work, then we'll have to go in the neck. So somebody's over here swabbing my neck now. You know, one woman on one hand, one woman on another hand, somebody swabbing my neck. And then the main anesthesiologist goes down to my leg and he said, you're numbed up already, so you won't feel anything. And I didn't feel anything, but I could hear the drill as he was drilling into my bone. But I was kind of out of it, so it was like, ew, that's creepy, but didn't bother me that much. Thankfully that worked. They were able to get the IV in there, and then they stopped prepping my neck and everything else, which that relieved a little bit of the panic attack because I really did not want that IV in my neck. But yeah, thankfully the one in my leg worked. And I remember hearing people, it was, like it was said, it was very chaotic. People were very rushed. You could feel the panic in the air, but I didn't entirely know what was going on and why everybody was so panicked. I heard somebody say, and I don't know which doctor it was, who it was, a nurse, whatever, but I heard somebody say something about the heart rate being too low, and I think it was something in the hundreds or whatever, and I knew they meant her heart rate, and I knew that her heart rate had always been in the 150s, maybe 160, nothing below 140, and I knew that a heart rate in the hundreds is very, very bad, and not, I mean, that's not an okay heart rate for a baby. And so again, I'm starting to panic, but I felt very woozy and very sleepy, and I kept feeling like I was going to fall asleep. And then I kept thinking to myself, this is stupid. Why can't you stay awake? All this excitement going on and you're gonna take a nap? What is wrong with you? And I was like mad at myself. So I'm like, why can I not stay awake? My daughter's about to be born and what is wrong with me? At the time, I didn't realize how bad things were for me. Not only were they bad for Adelia, but they were bad for me. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a combination of the magnesium and the spinal or what or why it happened. Nobody fully explained to me the why. I guess my blood pressure tanked. It had been sky high. I think at worst they said it was 190 over 108 or somewhere in that range anyway. And it dropped. Once they got me there and laying down, it plummeted. It went way too low. And that was why I felt so woozy and so sleepy, because I was on the verge of passing out. I didn't know that. I didn't know my blood pressure was low. I didn't know I was almost passing out. I just thought that I felt sleepy and just kind of really out of it. And I was trying to focus on what they were saying about Adelia, because I heard that her heart rate was bad. And everybody's still running around me trying to get IVs in at that point. And I could hear my OB, my former gynecologist, right just on the other side of the screen on my right side. And I hear him saying, start cutting. And I hear the anesthesiologist team, they're arguing, no, we don't have an IV in yet. We need to get her medication. And I thought they were saying, you know, like we need to get her the magnesium, not realizing that the medication they were talking about me needing was medication to bring my blood pressure back up because it was getting dangerously low. I didn't know that, but I just remember the OB start cutting because he was yelling at the other OBs that were doing the actual surgery, and the anesthesiologist is yelling at him, no, we're not ready, and he's like, I don't care, start cutting. They're still arguing, and finally I hear my OB go, cut now! And the whole room, you felt the entire room perk up and just stand at attention, and everybody did what they needed to do. Everybody did exactly what he told them to do. And that was scary for me because I know him. Like I said, I've known him for years, and I've known him to be very calm and very cool-headed. So to hear him yell, "Cut now," I knew something was wrong. And again, I'm trying not to panic, but I'm woozy from low blood pressure. So they just start cutting. They're cutting while the anesthesiologist is getting everything put together properly, and I'm wondering where the hell Ethan is at this point, because I know that they're starting the C-section, and so I'm trying to look behind me, and finally I say to someone, "Where's my husband?" And he must have just come in at that point, and he said, "I'm right here," and that's when he kind of wheeled up next to my head. And literally he wheeled up next to my head, and then we both heard what sounded like gurgly crying. And I thought, God, sounds like a baby, but like, you know, they're fresh from the womb, haven't yet gotten the fluid out of their lungs. And I thought, no, Ethan just got here. They haven't told him to stand up and start taking pictures yet like they did with Wyatt. And then I heard the gurgly cry again, and I'm like, no, that's a baby. And she started yelling, and I never got to see her. I heard them kind of pick her up and say, "It's a girl," and they were off and gone with her. And Ethan went off to see and take pictures and everything. But it happened so quickly, and it needed to happen very quickly. It got very dangerous for both Adelia and I, so I'm glad that I had the doctor that I had. I'm glad that he took charge, and he got me in the operating room, and he got me cut open and got her out, and they were able to get the medication to me to bring my blood pressure. And I did feel a huge difference, again, not knowing what was going on. There was a huge difference, though, when the medication kicked in and my blood pressure came back up to a more normal range, and I suddenly felt more awake and alert. And at the time, I thought it was just an adrenaline rush from Adelia being born, and I'm sure that was part of it. But I was unaware that it was a medication thing, too. So everything after that went okay. They said there was a lot of scar tissue, so it took a long time to kind of clean that all out and get everything sewn back together properly. It took longer than I expected. But Ethan went over and he was with her, and I've got some great pictures, at least, of him cutting the cord, and he's got a really neat one with her footprints on his arm. They wrapped her up and everything after they got her cleaned up, and he was able to bring her over to the side of the bed, or the operating table where I was, so I got to see her and talk to her a little bit. They came back, the nurse came at one point and said her blood sugar is too low, and then I don't remember the exact number. I just remember it was in the 40s, like 42 or 46. The kind of number that they flipped out over Wyatt and acted like he was going to have a heart attack and die any second. This nurse was like, her blood sugar's a little low, we need you to nurse, no big deal. So they just unsnapped the gown and pulled it down and put her on my chest, and the nurse helped, because obviously my arms were not fully functioning at that point. So the nurse just grabbed a hold of the boob and grabbed a hold of the baby and put the two together, and she latched right on, and she nursed wonderfully, and that brought her blood sugar up, thankfully. And I hadn't asked for any skin-on-skin or any kind of kangaroo care or what have you. It just happened because it needed to, because she needed to get the sugar boost. But it ended up being a really special moment and really nice to be able to have that skin-on-skin while I was still on the operating table, and to be able to nurse her right after she was born. It ended up being better than I had imagined. I was so scared of dropping her or something, and the nurse stayed right there and made sure everything was okay. So it ended up being really awesome, and I'm really glad that I got to experience that at least once out of the 3 C-sections that I had. So once they got everything sewn up and everything was good, they sent us back to the room where I had to sit for, oh God, another 24 hours.